Greetings, my lovelies. Have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, or just a great time off. In the time between when Neal and I recorded this and now when I'm posting it, it seems crypto has jumped. Bitcoin is above 4,000, Ethereum is above 150, and so it looks like Santa Claus came early this year, by a couple of hours. So that's some good news. Join us on Telegram if you want to chat, and for now, on with the show.
This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neal Kieran.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains. I'm Nathan Williams. Joining me today is Neal. Neal, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Nathan. I'm doing good. I'm surviving. Looks like things have calmed down in crypto land.
Calmed down in crypto land just in time for Christmas. I don't think they, if we look back on our predictions at the beginning of the year, I don't think Bitcoin is going to hit 50,000 anymore. I think, I think that maybe, I mean, there's still time.
There is still time.
There is still time, but it's not looking good.
Mathematically, it's still possible. It could go up 200% a day from now until Christmas, and then boom, there we go. We hit our $25,000 mark.
Yep.
But I'm not holding out hope. But
you don't believe in the Christmas miracle?
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. Santa Claus may come down the chimney with a $25,000 worth Bitcoin for me. We'll see.
I think for Santa to do that, he would have to probably lock a bunch of wallets and then generate a lot of FOMO.
Yeah. But I think it should be an interesting period over the holidays. Well, one thing we have noticed is that I think things are starting to turn. Now, I've said this multiple times over the year, but I was always skeptical or cautious of one issue whenever things looked to be stable, and that was that hash rate was always increasing, even though prices were dropping. But now we've started to see that hash rate is stabilizing, difficulty is stabilizing, active addresses are stabilizing for multiple blockchains. It's not just Bitcoin now. And that would suggest that crypto is potentially hitting a floor. And so now the thing is, this week we had a nice rally. Everyone got super excited.
I was excited.
Yeah, so was I. But also we have to remember that like things were oversold. Oversold conditions usually results in a rally anyway. And so I think when it comes back down, where it lands will be very interesting. Is it going to be a new low for the year, or will it actually like stop short of that? And if it stops short of that, I think there's a reason for optimism in 2019.
Yeah, well, I think that as we move into 2019, there's going to be a few things that we're going to see very different than 2018. And I've been thinking a lot about this just in general. I think that honestly, the era of the traditional ICO with a utility token is for the most part dead. I mean, that's not exactly provocative to say that, but I think that those days are behind us, and what we're going to see in 2019 is new business models. I think that there will be still base layer coins, base layer mining. I don't think Bitcoin or Ethereum are going anywhere. But in terms of other crypto, I think we're going to see many more stable coins and many more securitized tokens that don't depend just on the traditional utility token model.
So what's a securitized token?
Well, imagine, what is a security? A security is when you expect some sort of asset or some sort of return associated with the coin. So instead of making a untethered token like a ticket to an arcade, which would be the pure utility token model, and then hoping that the limited supply and increased demand will drive the price up. I think we're going to see more projects where you have either a stabilized token backed with some sort of asset, or you have a token that gives you rights to profits made on a system but that might not give voting rights. So it might be a little bit different than traditional equity, but it would still allow for the decentralization of control of a protocol or a platform. So imagine if you bought some tokens and then you had to stake them or you had to run the system, and then you get a percentage of the earnings. And we're already starting to see some projects coming out with models like that. We remember earlier in this year, we interviewed Haven. They're a stable coin that's decentralized, that has sort of dynamic price regulation. So, they've changed their model a fair bit now. I think they've even rebranded as Synthetics or something like that.
That's right. They have rebranded. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way it works is that you create a certain amount of their synthetic US dollars, and then you can use them or stake them or put them into the system to create liquidity, and then you get a percentage of the fees generated when people actually use it.
So yeah, it's exciting times. Like I would push back on the notion that ICOs are dead, because with these securitized tokens, there will be some form of ICO to potentially launch them.
I think what I mean is not that you can't buy tokens anymore, that people won't do this traditional launch, but I think that we witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime event last year where, I guess, end of 2017, beginning of 2018, where people would create a limited number of tokens with very little oversight, regulatory oversight, that weren't linked to anything other than trust that there was a project that was going to happen. And they would sell those for an inordinate amount of money and then use that to build their system. And the tokens would be a pure utility token. That was the way of the world. And I think that any project going in an ICO direction going forward is probably going to have some sort of business model behind it, some sort of existing system, possibly raising against equity, or having some sort of securitized token that would need some form of prospectus or regulatory oversight, or something that's much more diligent than we've required in the past.
I agree with you there, because what you had was an era of low barriers to entry. It wasn't very hard to set up your own ICO. And if you were to do it today, even if the conditions were more favorable in terms of price appreciation with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, first of all, you now need to raise millions of dollars, because you need to have far more effective marketing campaigns. Now, the regulations have become a lot more defined. Back then, it was just a free-for-all. But now okay, well, some companies got in trouble, some got prosecuted. Now ICOs have a reputation for scams. So yeah, I still believe there's a future in ICOs, but now that the barriers are higher, it means that a lot more work has to be done pre-ICO, before the whole launch is done. And that's why, going back to your idea of securitized tokens, I believe that ICOs will still be the way forward for launching stuff like that. Because I look at crypto and I think, okay, it kind of wants to be separate from traditional forms of fundraising. It's almost like an anti-Wall Street mechanism for funding. And if sometimes there's securitized tokens, you have to be careful, because it's nearly worth just doing an IPO instead of just doing securitized tokens based on blockchain. So I'm curious to see, what will evolve in 2019. Is it going to be very close to what already resembles the products out there on Wall Street, or will it be completely different and revolutionary? I'm hoping it's revolutionary. I'm hoping they don't use, almost like repackage something that already exists on Wall Street. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, 2018 was sort of the downward slope of the ICO. And I know a lot of companies that did successful ICOs this past year. But yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, Neal, that I still have this sort of fear that the benefits of blockchain are going to be centralized among some large corporations, and that's it. And I think it doesn't have to be that way, but I do see that is a danger on this road that we're on. That the more due diligence that's required, the more we get into securitized tokens, the more money that has to be raised up front, the more this moves away from the vision that Satoshi originally had.
I'm more optimistic, to be honest with you. Like, I still follow projects out there and like on Telegram or Discord just to see, okay, how does this project compare to other ones? Is it just a different shade of gray? One thing I find interesting with Quark Chain that I've been following recently is that now that they're testing their mainnet, you can go on AWS, like Amazon Web Services, and set up your node on AWS to have testing in the mainnet. So imagine a world where you can just set up your own node very easily through Amazon, and now you're part of a network. And the thing is that all of these different blockchains, I just see them as different networks with different properties. And in a world where consumers trust corporations less and are fearful of corporations, getting into the situation that you discussed, I can see companies becoming more dependent on these decentralized
and Amazon
networks because it's part of their business. Yeah.
Wait a minute here.
We will get to that
Something
part
doesn't
later
smell
on.
right here.
But I can see a world where, similar to what we've seen in the past, to many people, Bitcoin was a currency that would, take over fiat. I'm not totally bought into that myself, but the idea of everyone hosting different forms of networks that they believe in, and then if you have a new business model, you look at the network that can help you launch your new product, whatever that is. I can see that being the future, because that means that you don't have corporations making their own decisions based on solely on profit without taking a more holistic view in terms of society and the world into account. So I'm a lot more hopeful now. Going back to your Amazon point, yes, the idea that a world where these services are based or solely depend on Amazon, I'm very uncomfortable with that. But I can foresee a world where another company will come up with another alternative to AWS for people to host nodes and proof of stake algorithms.
I'm sure that there are many. I mean, but what I wouldn't like to see is a world where maybe there's one or two new players and a 10% improvement in cost efficiency that all gets funneled up to a couple of billionaires sitting at the top. And I've been thinking about this. I even mentioned it before. I think ultimately the shortcoming that we're seeing with all the crypto models that are out there right now is that they're purely financial. If you've got a financial incentive, then you have the exact same scenario that you have in every other economic model that has existed for the past few hundred years. But individual people are motivated by more than just money. And this is why we're having this conversation. If it really were just about money, we would have no problem with all of the profits going to, one or two sources or whatever. But inherently, we want something that's somewhat more equal, or something that includes us, or some sort of balance of power in the system. And this comes down to the different factors that motivate us: the autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and relationship, and status, and society, and we haven't seen economic models that have worked in a way to reward that, to reward people who are good players. I mean, we're starting to see a little bit of it outside the crypto world with social entrepreneurship, that type of movement. With donation models like Wikipedia as sort of the shining example. But when we find a way of categorizing these other types of value and benefit and intrinsic motivators of the human condition, and finding a way to put that incentivization on chain or in our economic models, then we'll have something quite powerful. But I think that there's a lot of research that needs to be done for that.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it'll take a long time before we hit that optimal network or a system that incentivizes people to do the right things, because economics has been redefined for centuries now. And, every time it's redefined or recalibrated, towards society, it works for for a period of time until people start to realize how to hack it. And, to come up with an unhackable incentive structure is very, very difficult because, people want to see this new system flourish, want to see it work. And it does do well for maybe 20, 30 years. But then, weaknesses start to appear, bubbles start to appear. People start to realize where the opportunities are and where they are not. And so whoever comes out blockchain, I think will be in evolution, possibly for eternity.
I don't doubt it.
Because it's, and I guess I'm just like trying to make the point that blockchain is not the silver bullet for these type of social and economic problems. It's going to help a lot. I think it's going to, because having innovation to help develop new business models is very, very important. And I think it has been key to human evolution for centuries now. And that's why I think so many of us are excited about blockchain, is that it just offers a new way of looking at business, a new way of fundraising, a new way of incentivizing, a new way of providing products, a new way of developing trust in a world where many people feel that trust has evaporated. So yeah, I agree with your point, but I do believe it's going to be a long time before we get to any sort of blockchain economic model.
Well, I think that part of it is just that people are not used to thinking in those terms. We act in those terms. We're motivated by our relationships, but we're not used to thinking of economic transactions in that way. And so that's why it's hard. And I don't have the answer. But I think that we're already seeing, existing examples of that where, certain people, because of contributions to a community online, might have a higher rating, like rating systems where certain people are power sellers on eBay, certain people are have extra karma on Reddit or extra followers on LinkedIn. And the question is there a way of tying that social capital to an economic capital so that people are rewarded based on contributing to an organization? And essentially, it's a different set of rules that we're trying to come up with, and there may be ways of hacking that. But I think that that's where we're going to see really interesting projects, is when people start attempting to come up with solutions to that and testing them out.
Yeah, I think one example out there, but I'm not a big fan of, is in China, where they have credit ratings, that people use their credit rating and advertise them on their job application or on their dating apps or whatever. Yeah,
it's like the Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's a bit creepy. In a way, I understand why it helps society, because it incentivizes people to save and be responsible in terms of their wealth management and not to get into debt and stuff like this. But it's still a bit weird to think, hey, look at me, I have a high credit rating. I'm the perfect bachelor for you. It's just it feels a bit weird. So it has started. But I think there'll be something again which will be evolving.
I think that's the sort of thing that a lot of it depends on who's in charge, and it's the sort of thing that I could imagine being much better in a decentralized manner or in a small community. But when it gets to the level of country where you have a small group overseeing it that are governed by different rules, then that, I agree with you, it gets rather scary. Things can mess up your life rather quick.
Yeah. But it's going to be interesting because, China is kind of a funny country at the moment, because on one hand, it has a all-seeing government, but at the same time, it's extremely enthusiastic about blockchain. So it's almost like two different extremes that are happening. So I'm very curious, will they meet in the middle? or will one overtake the
I
other?
don't know, Neal, but I think that no matter how you slice it, we're going to see research into these areas, and 2019 will be very exciting. So
Yeah, for sure.
until next time, Neal, have a wonderful holiday season. If I don't talk to you beforehand, have a good one, and I hope Santa Claus comes and brings you your $25,000 Bitcoin.
You too, Nathan. You too. I hope it brings you some nice waves.
At a high price.
At a high price.
Okay. Keep on hodling.